Thomas Langman, you guys know who he is, and Alex Ajad, you guys know Alex Ajad, the film director.
Hills Have Eyes, High Tension, Mirrors, Piranha 3D.
Right. Thomas Langman is actually the artist, basically, but he's the most well-known for the producer. He had actually seen the movie in France in the 80s, the original Maniac, and it had terrified him, and so he had always had the idea to remake it, so they approached me to sort of come up with a version. I had real reservations about redoing it.
It's a very singular film. It's very New York. It's got Joe Spinell's indelible performance, and this is obviously a very different film. It's very European.
I read the script at first, and it's like Lower East Side, empty. There's nobody. 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, what year is this thing? So, first New York didn't work. It was like, it's like New York's now the safest place I think I've been to in my whole life across the world. I feel, more threatened in Paris than they certainly do, here. And so, that's one of the reasons that we didn't shoot it. But the whole idea was to reinvent the entire film from the beginning.
Now, the original script you saw, did it have that point of view aesthetic where you see it all through his eyes, or is that something that came in later?
Yeah, that's something that we worked on eventually, trying to figure out how are we going to sort of do a fresh take on a serial killer movie. Last thing I wanted to do was redo a movie that's been bitten and copied, over and over again. And every genre film has scenes from this, and you can reference all movies and find somebody's been influenced somehow, has copied, and now I'm being asked to sort of copy the movie that everyone copied. It was a brutal sort of idea. I wasn't sure that I was ready for that, unless obviously we could figure out a fresh take. And so that's when Jean and I sort of wrapped up and came up with this idea.
So what led to the decision? Well, it was shot in L.A., correct?
That's right.
So what led to the decision to shoot there, and yet you never identified the city? It's completely anonymous.
I think it's because it's just looking for a city that has range and that looks different and that has isolation. And LA still has a lot of that. I suppose if you're in New York here and you go to these remote sort of areas, you can still find that. But in general, I mean, Los Angeles is very spread out and very empty and very void of life in a lot of places. And at the same time, it's got these pockets of very hip, little areas. It seemed like like the city was more modern and fit with today's sort of society. It's more like New York. It's a void kind of space. It's luxurious, and it's at the same time, it's decadent, and at the same time completely, thrown together. It's really interesting. Yeah. I think it mirrored more the character than New York.
And what led to the inspired choice to offer this to Elijah Wood, who might not be the first person casting people would think of to star in a remake of Maniac?
Certainly not. Certainly not. I think, who's the first person? Certainly not, because look, remember in your first, it's Megan that says, that's not what we expected, long, greasy hair and, Joe Spinell.
There's a great description of the character. I assume that was unintentional, where she talks about the guy with the dark hair and the greasy complexion and everything.
Spinell, yeah, that's who you're describing. And Elijah's such a nice guy. I was like, really? And then I think he's going to be scalping women? And then I figured, and then we all thought, for me it was great, the idea that it's like a really nice guy, the guy next door, the guy that comes, that you would never imagine. It's always what you hear in like, when you hear about serial killers and the neighbors, they always say, that guy, we never imagined that guy doing that. He was our neighbor. We ate ribs with this dude. Yeah, he seemed like such a nice guy. It's so weird, And so, I love that. I love the Ted Bundys. The Ted Bundys fascinate me. They're charming, they're intelligent, they have everything going for them, and yet they can't help themselves but, murder, people, women. And I find that fascinating. And so I thought, as opposed to the monster, and this is a dialogue that, Alex Ajad and I always have. He loves the monster, and I like the sort of guy next door, and we had that debate on High Tension years ago. The guy looks like a killer. How much fun is that? He's like, that's what's fun. He's a killer. And I don't know. And then and we had on P2 for the first film that I made that he also produced. I thought primarily in this movie was important that the relationship be believable, and I think that as much as I love the original film, I thought that the relationship between Spinella and
Carol Monroe, yeah.
For me, took me out of the film. There was two things that was important: that this relationship worked, and also that we felt sort of compassionate about the character, no matter, right? That we felt empathy for this character, no matter what happens. Right? That's beyond like the original, like the gore factor that we all remember. The original, what marked me the most, what really touched me was I felt so bad for this guy. I liked him so much. There's so much empathy for this horrible human being. And I felt like it's not his fault. He wants to be a nice guy, but he just can't. It's beyond him. And so that was the most important thing that captivated in this film. And I don't know if you guys felt that, but I love this character. Not because I love you, because I really love that he portrayed him. I feel bad for him.
Well, I think we should get the man himself to come on stage, say a few words, talk about the character. So, what were your first thoughts when you were offered this part?
It's our mutual friend Alex Taylor that actually got me the script, and she said, "Would you be interested in playing a serial killer in a movie where 80% of the movie is going to be in POV and you're only going to be seeing reflections?" And I actually found that really intriguing. I was really excited at that prospect. And I knew Alex Aja's work, and I loved his work as a director, and the fact that he'd written the script and was producing it was really exciting. And I love the genre, I'm a huge horror fan, so it was kind of a mixture of those elements that intrigued me. And the idea of playing a character like this, where I could sort of get into the heart of the character, but not in a sort of non-traditional way, was really exciting.
So when you joined the film, did you contribute a lot to the script? Did you kind of put some of your own ideas and your own self into the character?
Not so much in terms of the script. I feel like it was a collaboration on the day. The very nature of the film was, it was 4 weeks shooting at night in Los Angeles.
In 4 weeks?
It was 4 weeks, right? Yeah. 14 fucking days. It was a discovery process, every day. I think we had an idea of the movie we wanted to make, we had the script, but it was also rife with complication. The very notion of shooting something from a POV standpoint creates massive limitations, and I think you sort of imagine going into that, thinking you know what those limitations are going to bring, but it was a complicated shoot. It was difficult to figure out how we were going to shoot each sequence without traditional editing and coverage. So I think it felt like a collaboration the whole time. We would find things, the scene where Frank walks out of the cinema and ends up walking in front of the electronics store with all of the television screens. It's awesome, and that was in the script, but the thing that we sort of discovered on the day was that if Maxine put his hands up, he could get his hands in the frame, so we ended up doing this great choreographed moment where he turned around, I turned around, and I was on the sort of video screen, and then he and I both put our hands up at the same time to look like I was putting my hands on the grating. There are things like that we discover all the time. It was fun. He kept saying that the whole thing. Yeah. And we did. There was a great shot that you came up with too. There was a moment we were in the bedroom, and I was just sitting in that corner chair, and you're like, "This is fucking great. I just want to sit. I want you sitting there, staring off into the mirror." And that was something that we came from the day. Totally. There was a lot of discovery, and that was what was so exciting, I think, for everybody involved. Is as much as we had this great story to tell, there was, because of the process we were shooting, it created the elements. It was fun.
So were you behind the camera for every single shot? Was there anything that was done without you there, or were you there every single day?
Literally the only things that I wasn't there for, I left town for Button-Umthon. I went to Austin, which I said before I started the movie, I think I gotta go to Austin for Button-Umthon, which is this 24-hour film festival in Austin. And so that day, I think I missed a day of shooting, and it was just a hands. What was that? Well done, sir. Better luck than him.
So how did you negotiate stuff like when you're driving? There obviously seem to be some scenes that were kind of difficult to do, just in terms of getting you and the camera and all the props and everything kind of wrangled in a very, very tight, confined spaces in a lot of cases.
Stuff in the car was the most complicated. I feel we were ever actually driving with me and the camera at the same time. We were. Oh, fuck yeah, you're right. You're right, I was. I mean, it was a lot of me standing behind the DP trying to figure out how to fit into confined spaces, but also work my physicality into it as much as I could, if it were appropriate. So getting an arm in. We had another double there too, because occasionally 2 arms would have to break frame, and there wasn't enough space for me to get 2 arms in there. So we had this great double Steven, who was my left or right hand. And funnily enough, one of the more awkward moments was when I had to pass a knife from one hand to another. It was crazy. But when it's not your other hand, it's a fucking weird process that feels so unnatural. That's what it was. It's so weird. Passing an object from one hand to another seems like an easy thing. It was really hard. I was in full wardrobe, makeup, and everything all day, every day.
You didn't have to be, but that's the.
We never knew what was going to happen. Gotta be ready for anything, man. Wow. That's what you do.
I assume that meant a lot of coordination with the makeup effects as well. The K&B did the effects for this one, right?
They did.
The great K&B effects. So how was it working, kind of choreographing that with those guys?
It was great. I mean, the majority of what they did were the scalpings, which were fantastic, and the great whole, like the ripping of my face at the end. And I remember when that whole sequence was taking place, before we shot it, I said, we gotta get some guts. We gotta get some intestines that they pull out. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. Come on, you can't have them rip my legs apart and my face apart and not pull out guts. It was great. We had a lot of fun. They were wonderful.
So let's open it up to questions from the audience. Anyone?
Do you want to come up here for Q&A? In case there are questions.
Questions for the director or the star in the back? Yes.
This is for both of you collectively. I know that there's a lot of filmmakers out there that are really interested in getting into making horror films, myself included. And I was wondering if you had any tips or pointers for anybody looking to get into the industry, especially horror films, what they should do to make that happen for themselves.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, as we've seen, and we're living in a very interesting time as it pertains to young filmmakers and short films that get attention prior to a feature-length version of the film. Mama's a very good example. I don't know if you saw the short, but that was all over the internet. I remember falling in love with that short, and then shortly thereafter finding out that it was poached and made into a feature film. So that kind of happens now. So I would say, if I were trying to be a young horror director and I was trying to get into this, I would make a short. Make something really punchy and compelling and give a lot of attention. And the beauty of the genre is it sort of lends itself to that storytelling. So you can do something that can grab attention.
You're lucky nowadays to start, which wasn't the case when I was starting off making movies, is that you have access to cameras, consumer grade cameras and editing, and you can do it. If you believe in what you're writing, it's so easy to convince people when you believe what you're doing is right. If you don't, then it becomes a little more difficult. But if you really believe in a get your camera. I don't care what it is. I mean, I just did a really low budget little film, and I shot a lot of it with my iPhone. So it's true and it's possible. Because you're like, okay, you don't think so? Well, I think so, so I'm going to do it. And, you know, and so I have my iPhone and I have, you know, my computer, and I can, you know, do some movies. And if the kids are, why can't I? You know what I mean? Just do it. Don't scare us. It's easy to do. You know? And it becomes really what you write and what you put on screen. If it's effective, audiences are very forgiving in terms of like how technically savvy it is, or how perfect it is, or how it looks. If your ideas come across and if it's effective and it creates scares, then you win. And then people will pay attention. That's the great thing about what's happening digitally. You can shoot and edit and put it out there and distribute yourself and do it. So really just do it. Write and do it.
Limitations also lend themselves to good horror movies. You know, some of the great classics were made under great limitations with no budget. Halloween was made from nothing. You know, good ideas. Shoot.
And the original Maniac, too. So,
Precisely. Brings us back to square one.
well, I was actually going to ask, how much did both of you look at Maniac and Joe Spinell's performance and either take inspiration or say, here's a point where I want to make a departure and kind of go off in my own way?
I genuinely didn't use it as a point of inspiration. I honestly hadn't seen the film prior to making this version. And I think as I was leading up to the shooting of the film, I didn't want to see it, mainly because I didn't want to be overly referential to what he had done. And I knew that we were doing something different. So I didn't start watching, I didn't see the film until we were already in production. At which point, I then regretted not seeing the film because there's a great kill that was in the original version of this screenplay where Tom Savini gets shot with a shotgun. It's fucking awesome. When I saw the movie, I went to set and I told Alex Aja, I was like, dude, what the fuck? That was the greatest kill. Like, we should have had that. And he's like, oh, there's a different version of the screenplay. If only I watched it earlier.
I felt that would take out the audience. Yeah. No, and I think that, there's some things you don't, I personally wanted to leave it alone. In terms of sympathy, empathy, see some guy's head blow off, and all of a sudden, I think to me it was way out there. Yeah, it was important for me to keep people in sort of a real place, But I think in terms of like Tom Savini, not Tom Savini, Joe Spinell, I think what marked me the most, like I said, was his performance and how he felt empathy for him. And that's the one thing that I wanted to say. I knew we were doing a movie, but I felt that if you could write a character that you could like and feel bad for, then that would make the film exactly. So,
Question over here?
No. He came. He showed up a couple times. He was real gracious and he was real sweet, but he's like, I don't like remakes. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. I think so, somewhat, yeah. He's always attached. I mean, that's his brand. He's the author of it, so yeah.
Question here?
Any of the genre. I have a production company that produces horror films. Let's go. There's a movie called Cooties that goes into production in July. Cooties, guys. If you can believe it or not, there was never a movie in the 1970s made called Cooties. How is that possible? How is that possible? In all the exploitation cinema from the 70s through the 80s, there was never a movie called Cooties. It fucking is. So, it's a movie, Lee Winnell, who wrote Saw and Insidious, wrote it with Ian Brennan from Glee. It's quite a pair. It's a horror comedy about a zombie virus that affects a group of children pre-puberty, a la Cooties. Right, exactly. And it's about a group of teachers who were stuck in a school as they contend with these children. It was kind of inspired by Who Can Kill a Child, which is actually a serious film that was more recently remade into
Come out and play, yeah. Don't touch that.
but Who Can Kill a Child is a movie I loved. We were all, like my three partners and I, we were frightened at the notion of children that could be a genuine threat. And I find children to be scary in horror films, and that kind of inspired this idea. And Lee Winnell said, I love it, can I make it a comedy? So we're like, well, yeah, okay. So we're shooting that in July, and we've produced a film that's in post-production now called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which is an Iranian black and white vampire film, Farsi, which we're really excited about. And we have a film called Toad Road that we actually acquired at a film festival.
Great movie. I saw it at Fantasia, yeah. Excellent film. Check it out.
We have my production company also has kind of conspired with the Cine Family in LA for a horror film festival called New York City. And as a result of submissions at that festival, we saw this one for the road. Hopefully pretty blown away by it. It's a documentary, but it weaves in kind of horror narrative towards the end. It's really fun.
Who's directing Cooties?
It's a pair called Honest. And they have typically done short films or commercials. And they're really trying to get those out.
Any other
Scripts.
No, it's seen that.
I know.
Another remake of Cooties.
Yes?
The original script, I mean, you remember the one that wasn't the original script? The idea that he's slowly transforming himself into mannequins, and that it's happening to him. You're talking about technically how that was. I mean, it's Elijah in his undies. It's just Elijah. and then we shot a mannequin, and sort of nagged it to. So that's one of those visual effects shots. I'm real weary about using too much visual effects. Most of the stuff, and I would say 95% is all practical. The stuff in the mirrors and all that stuff is really done. It's just angles and skewed and sort of smoke and mirrors, which I thought was really important to preserve for this film, to keep this organic stuff. But there's a couple of visual effect shots there, and that's one of those. Effective, painful.
More questions? Down here?
Appreciate what you're saying, very sweet. I appreciate that level of shock. So it's something I appreciate when I see people in the same creative field get into the genre and lend credibility to the genre, because I believe it deserves it firmly. And I think we're seeing more of that. But as it pertains to me spending every day on set, that became, I didn't feel like I was doing like a kindness. It was my responsibility. It's funny because I think initially when they offered the movie, it was 2 weeks of reflection shots or whatever. Yeah. And they wanted to get a double for my hands. And I was like, whoa, wait. I was like, those hands have to make choices. I want to make those choices. You know what I mean, as an actor, and it's important for me to be around. Well, I don't know. I think when you sign on to something in this industry, when you're a part of the film, you're a part of the film through, just there to do your little part. I have less respect for people who just do it. But thank you.
No, actors should live in response to his character. Much more important with Nora sort of response to me than to the script. It wouldn't have gotten the same reaction or the same sort of performance.
But that's the other thing. Totally. And the other thing too, that we lock on the same foundation. So even though most of the people are POV and we would go in as actors and genuinely block them out as a cast and figure out, with you where different characters would be and where Frank would be and then Maxine would be. So the approach, albeit non-traditional in the way it was shot, was very traditional in terms of getting right.
As an artist, always you want to try and do something original. You want to try creating original characters. You want to write original things. And so, you don't want to, get, pinned down and saying, oh, this is a remake. So it was important for me that we come up with an original sort of way of telling a story. And I think that's where the POV sort of stemmed from. And then I think, and still you're like, and then I think of Hollywood in general and how, used to be a time when film disintegrated, and every year or so they had to remake the same films over and over again. And so it helped me get through it. I'm like, hey, they did it. It's the original of, it's the origins of filmmaking. You always have to redo, sort of the same. We have to retell the same stories and try and do it in a fresh way. I mean, how many types of stories are there? The dramatic themes, maybe 12, I think, dramatic sort of structures that there are in storytelling and sort of great narrative. And so you're always going to be telling the same stories. How do you tell them? How it's different? How do you connect to people in a way that's sort of fresh and that connects to this audience? I have a feeling that this movie perhaps connects to today's audience a little bit more in general than Bill's film, which was very of the time. Really was very effective in the time. This version is more lush, certainly. There was an article that I read about how his film, it smelled like piss, and I thought, wow, that's great.
Some of the locations are.
It is great. And then when somebody came out of this movie and said, I felt like my puppy got run over by a dog, and I said, well, this is our version. We're puppies, and everybody pissed on the 70s. Everybody was pissing on films, and we love the little dog. I don't know. I mean, know, who knows? We try and relate to, I try my best to try and create a version of this film that can connect to people and sort of, and I think today's audience is a lot more complicated. I mean, it wouldn't have been a shock. And that's why the whole head thing to me was a little bit, would have been jarring as opposed to really telling. You know what I mean? Or really insightful. It was just, you know, it would have taken people out and go, oh, you know, oh yeah, okay, so we grew up ahead, you know, but it was important to try and somehow get maybe a little deeper into it. We have a very complicated audience, and audiences have seen everything. It's really hard to move them, you know, now. Way more than it was back then. You know, how effective The Exorcist was back then. And then now, today, you watch it, you're like, okay, it's, you know, a gazillion times. But remember how effective that movie was back then. Audiences don't get moved anymore. You really have to sort of, you know, have layers and you know, do something more. You know, look at how ineffective like a lot of the remakes have been recently. Just trying to do the same thing over and over. Where they don't work because there's something. So, you know, how do you engage somebody in an audience? And I think that, and watching a movie now, you know, in this movie, every turn of the way is unexpected. You know, you may agree with it or not, you may like it or not, but you're not expecting it. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do in the genre, and I think in filmmaking now is to sort of engage your audience so that they're captivated and they follow it. Because I hate going to movies and seeing things that I've seen before. I can tell, immediately could tell what's going to happen. And I don't think that's the case. I think you're really surprised, you know, every turn of the way. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Down here?
Yeah. You know, Thomas Langman, who did The Artist, I have a little story about him. He did The Artist, and he said, you know, Frank, I made a movie. I go, yeah, what is it? Was it black and white and silent? And he said, yeah. You idiots. That's what I said to him, literally. And then in the Oscar, he's like, hey, look, you want to touch my Oscar? And he called me the night before, and he goes, maybe we should cover some scenes. You know, it is Elijah Wood. And I said, yeah, but maybe we should have talked about that, you know, 3 weeks ago when we were prepping this film, you know. And so the idea also when you, you know, film is about being with your character and feeling what the character feels and seeing this character, and all of a sudden we don't see him anymore. That's a real problem. And then the idea that you are in a POV sort of really takes away a lot of suspense in terms of making a genre film. All of a sudden, you know, a big part of scaring people is being with the unsuspecting victim and not knowing where the killer is. Well, if you are the killer, then you always know where he is, and you're really zapping a lot of suspense out of the film, you know? And so there was those elements, and then being able to see, I had to figure out ways on how to see Elijah so that we can connect. And remember the whole idea that we have to feel empathy for this character is really important. And so, how do you do that? We have to see him. We have to be able to see him to be able to feel him. You know, right. Well, you know, and so that now in doing the research, so then there's ways. All right, so you're going to see him in the reflections. And then I figured, oh, dreams. You know, just kind of figure out a lot of times. So okay, so you know, flashbacks, that'll work. And then in reading about serial killers, you always hear about this out of body experience with the killing. And I thought, and sort of light went on. I thought, oh, that's great. So we'll be able to not only, you know, see the violence, but also be able to, you know, be with our character and you know, it'll take us out a little bit for an instant, because you really got to breathe a little bit. I don't know if you know, there's some POV movies out there, and they're just full-on POV, and it's hard to swallow. 2 hours to get out. So I try to offer things so that we, you know, we would be out of the POV and would give us a break, but it would stay within, you know, the concept of the film. So those are the 3
Time for 1 or 2 more questions. Over here.
Our scene blows my mind. That was always one of my favorites. It's so, I think that scene is so powerful up in the apartment overlooking the city. That scene is so powerful because I feel like it gets a little bit deeper into what's really psychologically going on with the and it's also, it's two things. It's the sheer brutality of what's going on, and also what he's saying. Mistaking, like he's actually sort of blatantly mistaking this person for his mother. It's so fucked. And I think also the orchestration of the scene is really beautiful. From the bath sequence, which was really difficult to shoot, and I found personally very uncomfortable. Holding someone's head down underwater, regardless of whether they're okay with it, is uncomfortable. And then this beautiful shot, this composed shot of what seems like we've broken POV into what is POV of the city, then looking at her on the bed. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful, crossing the reflection of the glass as well. And then just the disturbing kind of connection that he seems to have with this person who he doesn't know. That whole sequence I think is really beautiful and awful. I find it the most effective in some ways, but also the first kill is like with the title.
I think also what's disturbing is that, he confuses it for his mother and stuffs panties in her mouth. And that's just something really, By the way, Jan was great. She was amazing. I said, I said, okay, Jan, welcome to the movie. Now take your clothes off. We're going to hog tie you to the bed. Welcome.
That seems like a good note to end. Oh, wait, we have one more? Okay.
Yes. Fuck, I wish we were that cool.
Dude, that's the move to end on right there.
I think so,
The
yeah.
Halloween reference. That's awesome. No, it wasn't. But yes.
Guys, thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed the movie.
Oh
yeah,
y'all can go into.
The haunted house is available. We're going to have a drink out at the bar now. We're going to hang out. So thank you all again for coming.
Thank you, Frangoria. Thank you, IFC. Thank you guys for putting this together. Thank you all for
Thank you
coming.
all for
It was a
coming.
pleasure. Thank you.